Why every business needs processes and how to create them. So every small business has more things to do than time to do them. That's just sort of the nature of the beast. So we all need to find ways to be able to work smarter and not harder. And we need to be able to reduce any of the waste time and resources whenever we possibly can. That way we can focus on the stuff that's most important, most impactful, and will make the biggest difference to our business. And so to be successful and to allow for growth, it's super important that we're efficient and that we create processes to create that efficiency. Because when we have a process or a set way of doing something over and over and over again, what happens is our business becomes more efficient because we can look at that process, we can analyze it and see anywhere that there's waste, anywhere there's inefficiency, anywhere there could be improvements and things to make it done faster and better. But also we have the relatability of it. So when we have a process in place, we can give it to somebody else and they can follow along as well. In most small businesses, what happens is the vast majority of the intellectual capital and property is in our own heads. And so we have a way of doing something, but if we don't have it documented, if we don't have a process written down, if we aren't there or whoever is responsible for that task isn't there, it isn't able to be done, or at least not done in the same way. When we have a process in place, it's something that we can always refer back to. We can use it as a training tool for other people. We can use it over and over again and analyze all of the statistics of it to see whether or not there are elements that can be improved. So we can always be improving, always making things more efficient. And it'll allow us to really identify those areas where there are bottlenecks and where there are issues. It'll also help us identify the skill sets required for each of the things that we need to do. So if we are outsourcing, if we are hiring, if we're building out a team, we'll have an opportunity to take a look at that and say, look, these are the skills that we're going to need from someone to be able to do this process. And there's a host of other benefits too. Another great thing about having processes is it makes us less important to the business. If we're less important and less required on a daily basis, that makes our business more valuable. Not only can we then aspire to have sort of a work-life balance and have more downtime, but in addition to that, our business becomes more valuable and attractive to anybody else if we ever decide we want to leave. Because if we wanted to sell it, then we have an opportunity to give it to somebody who can just take it over with all these processes in place. When all the information's in our head and it's all sort of proprietary, there's very little value in that for anybody else because they're going to need to come in, they're going to need to learn it all, and they're going to need to be able to do it all. So that's the point of setting up processes in our business. It's not to add structure because we love structure. It's to add structure because there's real financial and efficiency benefits from doing it. And so that's the important thing. Some people resist the idea of processes because they believe that it's actually restrictive, when the opposite is true. It's liberating, because once we know exactly what we need to do for each process, we can look at that, we can analyze it, we can improve it, but also it frees up time to be able to do the other things as well. And so the whole game is to get more done in less time and be able to scale successfully. If we have no processes in place, even if we're doing really well, if we try to scale, there's so much inefficiency that oftentimes what happens is we end up, the scaling or the growth efforts end up failing or stalling, and we revert back to where we were. So we keep sort of stuck in this rut. Once we have processes in place, we can scale, we can build on that, we have a really strong foundation. So those are some of the benefits, but I want to talk a little bit more specifically about it, and most importantly, how to set these up in your business, because I think it's super important. So when we implement processes, we are able to streamline our operations, we're able to reduce inefficiencies, and that all supports growth. So just to reinforce some of the reasons why we need them, as if the ones that we went over aren't enough. I mean, the fact of the matter is, we want to be able to eliminate inefficiencies, and this comes from both a time and a money standpoint. If we're spending money on something that we aren't getting value from, we want to eliminate that, especially if we don't have much of a budget. And that's super important as we scale because any inefficiency financially there expands. And so if we have a problem where we're leaking money somewhere and then we expand that out, we're just going to leak more and more. So we want to get rid of it from that standpoint. From a time standpoint, it allows us to use fewer people and resources to get the same amount of work done. So if everyone's operating at their peak efficiency or capacity or pretty close to it, that's far better than having 5 people when we only really need 3. So if we have efficient processes for labor as well, then it makes everything much more effective in the business. So when we set up a process, it helps us to identify and eliminate any of those redundancies and inefficiencies. And then as we grow, it's super important because we're going to be able to scale with that too. But also, we're going to be able to refer back to our processes. So as we scale and grow and as time goes on and things evolve, we may find there are some things that we were doing just out of a habit that no longer make any sense, or that there's a better, easier, faster way to do it. So we want to be able to always be looking at those to go back to them and say, hey, what can we do to make this better? What can we do to improve this? So we have a structure to be able to replace ineffective systems. And so that is going to give us the ability to scale far better. It also helps us with time and resource management, as we've talked about, right? When we have processes in place, we get an idea of how long things take. That allows us to figure out capacity. If I have somebody on my team that has 6 different tasks to do during the day, and I have no idea how long they take, they could be slow, they could be fast. I could hire somebody else who might get it done in half the time or take twice as long. If I have these set as processes, I can analyze that and look at that and I can say, okay, look, we can see that on average this takes an hour, this takes 90 minutes, this takes an hour. So look, that's really only 3.5 hours out of your day. So you can actually take on more and do additional things as well. And so that way we can maximize the efficiency and capacity of every resource in the business as well. So that's going to be very important as we expand and as we face more complex challenges, because things, when we scale, the one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs overlook is the challenge with scaling is that it increases complexity in an exponential fashion. So what works when we're really little and when we're bootstrapping and when we're rolling up our sleeves and just, powering through with effort all of the work that needs to be done doesn't work as we get bigger, as the team gets bigger, and as there are more people involved. And one real interesting psychological dynamic is if there is any lack of structure or there's any degree of chaos or things that aren't organized, disorganization, what ends up happening is not only does efficiency drop, but employee motivation drops. And so it becomes almost pervasive, where then no one is working efficiently, no one is working to capacity, because why should they? Nothing else around here works that well either. So there's no real urgency, there's no real rush to do what I need to do. I'll just get it done when I can get it done. So it's important for a whole host of reasons, both obvious and a little bit more sneaky in terms of the way things work that way. For training and onboarding, processes are vital. This is one of the things that's most important. So when we scale, even if we're outsourcing, even if it's not an employee, if we have a documented process, it makes it easier to train new employees and new staff and new outsourcers and ensure smooth transitions when the staff changes occur. Because that way what we're able to do is say that this is what the process is, this is how we do it, and this is what greatness or excellence looks like. So we can show what the results look like and we can show what the process is. Look, we've had somebody doing this process for 9 months. We know that the variability in time is between 45 minutes and 1 hour and 15 to get it done. So anywhere, sort of within that threshold, we would be okay. And we know that these are the results they typically get. And so that way we can judge that. Now with somebody new, we're going to give them a little bit of time to get up to speed and get efficient with it. We're not going to hold them to the same standard on day one, but they understand what the target is. So not only do we know it, but we don't need to stand over people because we have the process in place. We could tell them if the first couple of days it takes them 90 minutes, 2 hours, they realize, hey, I got to be able to do this faster because the last person was able to do this in 60 minutes. And so it automatically encourages them and motivates them to want to improve, get better and faster and more efficient. And so having a process in place really helps with the onboarding from a training perspective, from the perspective of bringing somebody in and having them efficient and effective from day one. When you bring somebody in and there's chaos or lack of organization, their initial impression is, even if they were excited when they were starting, it sort of starts to wane. And they become less excited and they become a little bit more ambivalent and less interested because we don't have a great structure in place anyway. And so we want to make sure that we encourage people to have the right attitude, to feel good, and to know exactly what they need to do and exactly how to do it. So that will reduce the learning curve for new hires. It helps maintain continuity in the operations so we don't have a lone wolf coming in each time reinventing it. They can look at it and say, are there improvements we can make to the process and fix it? Great. But they can start with the same thing. Another big benefit is automation and specialization. Right? It allows for us to be able to automate repetitive tasks. If we see things that are being done over and over and we're wasting a lot of time, we may even be able to use systems or technology to be able to do it instead of human beings. And that way, we can reduce errors, we can free up time for people to be able to focus on the more strategic things and the things that they get more excitement and enjoyment and feel more rewarded by doing. So it also enables specialization, where particular employees can focus on the tasks that match their skills and interests. If we're just sort of figuring out each day, these are the 100 things that need to be doing and round robin assigning stuff to whoever happens to be available, you're going to get people who are mismatched with the stuff they have to do. They don't like it, they're not good at it. When we know what needs to be done all the time, it's very easy for us to give the right things to the right people all the time. There's also some element of risk mitigation because when we have a defined process, it also makes us a little bit more resilient to risks like employee turnover, changes in the market, because at least we know we have something that we can go on and we have something that we can adapt and change really quickly. So we have that framework that helps maintain operations even in difficult situations, but we also have the ability to pivot really quickly if we need to. And so now let's talk about, I think, we've pretty much established it's super important to have processes in our business, no matter how big or how small. Now let's talk about how to create them in our business because this is vitally important and we need to be able to do this right. And it's important to understand there's a learning curve with this. It's a skill like anything else. So if we try this and it doesn't work out the first time or we need to make adjustments, that's fine. That's normal, that's natural, it's part of the whole growth process. But the first thing is to identify areas for processes. The first thing we need to do is figure out, hey, which areas of our business are we going to be able to benefit from any kinds of process in place here? So this is going to include things that are routine, stuff that's done all the time. So any sort of routine task that's done over and over and over again. And these don't, by the way, because they're routine, doesn't mean they need to be simple or low level. It doesn't have to be responding to emails in an inbox. It can still be a project. If we have an ad catalog that needs to be produced by the end of the day, Friday every week, it might be a project, but it's still routine. We're still doing it over and over and over again. So that's something that we want to have a process for. If we have a one-off job and we don't really think this is something that's going to be, recurring or coming up over and over again, then we don't need to bother with a process. There's more work in trying to create a process for that than there is in just doing it and getting it done. But anything that's routine, anything that's done over and over again, anything that has objectives or standards for what the output is, are all things that are given really, really well to setting up a process because we can show what the steps are, we can show what the output is, and what and set the expectations that way. And so anything that's routine, because it's done over and over again, it's a big, usually time commitment from our business. A 10% improvement in efficiency in that is going to make a massive difference if it's something we're doing over and over and over again every day or every week. And so that's the other really important thing here. So we want to identify all the routine tasks and we want to identify all the things that we need to do over and over again. Or we want to identify things that are vitally important. So maybe they're infrequent. Maybe it's only a couple times a year. But it's something that's so important, and it has some proprietary knowledge where if the person doing them left or wasn't able to do them, we wouldn't be able to get them done. Those are all things we want to get documented and a process put around. So that way, if somebody else has to do it, if somebody else has to come in, they're able to, but also we're able to identify any bottlenecks and problems, fix those, and optimize our operations. The second thing that we want to do when we're creating processes is to engage the people in our business that are using those processes. Now, if we're a lone wolf, if we're a solopreneur, right now it might only be us, and that's fine. We need to engage ourselves. Nothing wrong with that. But if we have staff, even if they're outsourcers, even if they're remote outsourcers that live in another country, it doesn't matter. If they're doing things for us, we want to identify who's doing each of the things and who's going to be responsible. And what we want to do is actually put them in charge of creating and evolving each of the process. This is really important. As the business owner, as the CEO, it's impossible to have dominion over every little thing that's done. And in fact, it's counterproductive. Because if we're stepping into somebody else's area and we're dictating how they should be doing everything, we, A, may not have the best answer anyway, but B, it's going to be annoying to them because they're already used to doing it. Why are we now coming in and telling them, no, this is how you do it? Instead, we ask each person that's doing something to create a process for it. We can give them a template that says, this is how you list out the steps. This is how you list out the tools. These are the other things. And even our template can evolve. If we realize once we try this exercise that, we missed 4 things on the template, go back to the template, add those in. So now every new process we create, we have a new template that's more accurate and complete. Each person creates their own. This gives them a sense of ownership over it. It gives us a sense of how they think and how they're doing it. It allows us to see the steps that they're following. And it also gives them some ownership and control. And then we tell them, your job is to identify if there's any things that we could do here faster, better, easier. And if there is, let's get that stuff implemented. So this isn't something to create and shove in a drawer. It's something to create and revisit on a weekly or a monthly basis and analyze it. Hey, is this still running as well? Are there things in here we can make changes? By doing this, we share the workload so we don't feel overwhelmed by the fact that we have to create a process for everything in our business. But at the same time, we also give ownership to the people that are responsible for it anyway, and they probably know best anyway. So they're going to be able to create that process so we can always edit them later and fix those. But doing that gets buy-in from the people that are getting involved in it. It makes them feel important about it and makes them feel valued with it instead of dictating, this is what you need to do, this is the process to follow. Then what we need to do as step 3 is we need to define our current and our desired state. So for some of these particular processes, we're going to have, those are going to be the same thing. It's working really well, right? We don't necessarily need to make changes. So we've got it documented and we're happy with the results. Great. So this is what the current state is. This is the desired state. Fantastic. Some of the things we're going to look at and we're going to say, listen, this is where we are. This is where we should be. So that could be a quality thing where the desired state is a better quality. It could be a higher results. It could be less time or resources to get it done. But whatever it is, we want to define the 2 states, where we are and where we want to go. That gives everybody clear direction on what their plan is. So again, instead of standing over people and saying, well, listen, we really need you to get this done faster, they can look at the process themselves. They can see that it's at 90 minutes a day and we need to get it down to 75 minutes or whatever it is. So they can then take a look at, what could I do differently to make this go faster? So we want to analyze how the tasks are currently managed, and we want to identify areas for improvement. Now, we need to be realistic here. We can't just throw together a bunch of processes and just arbitrarily say, I want to cut 25% off of the time on that. In some cases, we may not be able to do that. It might be as good as it's going to get. But we do want to analyze that and take a look. And then we develop processes that bridge the gap between the current state and the desired outcomes. So if we know what we want and we know what we have, we can figure out ways to get there. The fourth thing is we want to take a look about, are there any tools that we can automate? Is there any technology that we can use that would automate any parts of these? And again, we have to weigh cost versus benefit. If it's something that's done very rarely And yes, it would save a couple hours, but it's only a couple hours a month, and the cost of it is thousands of dollars. It probably doesn't make a lot of sense. If it's something that's going to save us 60 minutes, 90 minutes a day, or the cost is very low, then it makes a lot more sense. We also have to determine, yes, there might be something that can automate this, but what is the learning curve to get it automated also? And is it worth it? If it's going to save us 10 minutes a day and it's going to take 4 weeks of 3 hours a day to get it implemented, that obviously doesn't make any sense. So we need to be logical about this and smart, but at the same time, we always want to look for any ways that we can automate things. And then, of course, we want to document it. It's super important that as we go through this process, we document each process in all the steps with all the details. And I recommend putting links to any tools or outside resources. So the document in and of itself, and these can be digital, but they need to be documents that contain everything that's needed for it. We don't want to have, passwords or logins or, this tool that then somebody needs to search for later. We want to have all those things linked and connected so people know where to find them. Because if we do that, then we have one place where we can go for a consistent output. And then we want to implement and train. So once we have those documents, set up, then we could train anybody on them if we need to. And, it might be something where somebody new coming in needs to be trained. It might be something where we want, cross-pollination of tasks. So if somebody's out sick or needs to go on vacation, somebody else can do it. We can have the person who created the process train another person on it. So we have a fail-safe, we have a backup. So by implementing well-defined processes, we can improve our efficiency, we can reduce our costs, and we can position ourselves for growth and success. That's super important. So the takeaway here is that we all want our businesses to be successful. And we also want to be able to minimize our problems, and we want to be able to maximize our results. I mean, that's part of what business is, right? So implementing processes is the most effective way to do that. And it also creates consistency and predictability, which are absolutely vital for growth. The more processes that we have in place for our business operations, the more scalable we are, and the less our business is going to be dependent upon us for daily direction, daily management, daily oversight. So this also makes our business more valuable. So if we ever decide that we want to consider an exit strategy, sell it off or whatever else, we'll be able to sell it and get a far better valuation because things are running really well and somebody could step in and see they could just take it over. As business owners, we always need to be thinking about what we can make more efficient and optimized. And by starting with the process of creating processes, that's the best way to make it happen.